I'm 76 years old, and only now do I understand that fear did not destroy my life all at once. It took it quietly, in small decisions that looked sensible at the time. For most of my life, I did not call it fear. I called it being careful. I called it responsibility. I called it being the kind of man who did not make reckless choices. That is how I lived with myself. I gave fear a respectable name and let it sit at the center of my life. Now I live alone in a quiet house, and there is not much left to distract me from the truth. My wife has been gone 3 years. Some mornings I still wake up and think I hear her in the kitchen. For a few seconds I am still married. Then I remember. At my age, grief no longer arrives like a storm. It sits down beside you and stays. Her name was Elaine. She was a good woman, patient, steady, kinder than I understood while I still had the chance to tell her so. I used to think fear meant panic. I thought it looked like shaking hands or running away, but that was never my kind of fear. My fear was quieter than that. It wore a clean shirt. It went to work. It paid bills. It avoided trouble. It kept the peace. It looked so much like maturity that even I believed it. I grew up in a house where mistakes were remembered for a long time. My father was not a violent man, but he had a way of making you feel that one wrong step could change how he saw you. My mother was gentle, but always tired. There was food on the table, but not much ease in the room. So I learned to be careful, to not ask for too much, to not become a burden, to keep things steady. That may not sound like much, but a whole life can be built around that kind of caution. When I was young, I wanted to be a teacher. I loved history. I loved old stories, the way people spent generations making the same mistakes and giving them different names. I imagined standing in front of a classroom talking about the past as if it still mattered. But it did not seem secure enough. The pay was uncertain. It would have meant taking chances, maybe moving, maybe failing. So I took an office job instead. It was steady work. Numbers, inventory, invoices, routine. Nothing terrible. That is important to say. I was not miserable. I was just absent from myself. There was a woman then, before Elaine. Her name was Ruth. She worked at the library and had a direct way of speaking that made me nervous. Once she asked me why I always sounded like I was asking permission to exist. She was right. She talked about moving away, starting over somewhere else, and once she asked if I would ever do something bold like that. I remember wanting to say yes. I remember feeling that pull in my chest, but I said the practical things instead. My parents needed me nearby. I needed stable work. It was not the right time. A few months later, she left. I do not tell you that because I think she was the great lost love of my life. She was not. But she was one of the first moments when I understood, even then, that I wanted more than I was willing to choose. Later, I married Elaine, and I did love her. I loved her in the way I knew how. I worked hard. I came home. I fixed things when they broke. I was dependable. But dependability is not the whole of love. I know that now. We had 2 children, a daughter and then a son. There were lunch boxes, school shoes, bills on the counter, tired evenings, family dinners, colds in the winter, little celebrations that passed too quickly. It was a real life, a decent life, but fear lived inside it with me. I was afraid of not providing enough, so I gave too much of myself to work. I stayed late when I did not need to. I said yes to things I should have refused. The world praises a man for that. It does not tell him what it costs. I missed my daughter's first piano recital because something came up at work, and I did not want to look unreliable. I still remember arriving too late and seeing her in that little white blouse, holding the folded program in her lap. She looked at me and said, "It's okay, Dad." Children say that when they are already learning how to carry disappointment without making it harder for you. My son was quieter. Once he came into the garage while I was pretending to be busy sorting old nails and screws. He stood there a long time. I knew he wanted to talk. I knew it. But I was afraid of saying the wrong thing. Afraid of opening up something I did not know how to handle. So I stayed focused on the workbench and made it easy for him to change his mind. He did. Later, Elaine told me he had been struggling at school, and that was probably what he had wanted to tell me. I had been standing right in front of my son's need, and fear made me choose a handful of rusted nails. That is how it happens, not in one disaster, in small refusals, small delays, small moments you assume will come again. My mother got sick when she was older. I kept meaning to visit more. I kept meaning to ask her about her life, her childhood, the things she never said when I was young. I thought there would be time for that later. There wasn't. When she died, I found a box in her closet with old photographs and drawings I had made as a child. She had kept those scraps of me all her life, and I had kept postponing her. That hurt in a way I still do not know how to describe. Elaine asked me for simple things, a trip somewhere quiet, more evenings together, more of me, really. But I always had a reason to wait. Work, money, repairs, retirement, the next season, a better time. Then she got sick. By then I was retired. By then I had time. Isn't that the cruel part? I had finally become available when she was already leaving. I drove her to appointments. I sat with her in hospitals. I learned medicines and schedules and all the practical things. I was very good at the practical things. One evening, near the end, she looked at me and said, very calmly, "You were a good man, but you were often far away." She did not say it with anger. That made it harder to bear. Then she said something I have never forgotten. She said, "Even when you were here, you were bracing for something. I don't think you ever really arrived." She was right. Fear had made me live in reserve. Reserve with my feelings. Reserve with my time. Reserve with joy. Reserve with love. as if giving too much of myself would leave me with nothing. But that was the real mistake. Holding back did not protect my life, it reduced it. There are things I cannot fix now. I cannot be in the audience at that recital. I cannot go back to the garage and turn toward my son. I cannot sit longer with my mother while she was still able to speak. I cannot give Elaine the version of me she waited for. My children are grown. They are decent to me, kind even, but years leave marks. Love survives many things, but distance leaves its own shape behind. I do not hate my life. There were good days in it, warm kitchens, long drives, my children laughing, Elaine reading in bed, my mother humming while she cooked. It was not an empty life, but it was a guarded one. If you are listening to me, I am not trying to tell you how to live. I am only telling you what became clear too late for me. Fear does not always tell you to run. Sometimes it tells you to wait, to delay the conversation, to postpone the visit, to hold back the truth until the right moment. The right moment is a dangerous thing to believe in. I thought I needed more time before I showed up fully, more certainty before I spoke honestly, more safety before I let people see me. That was the lie. The people who loved me did not need perfection from me. They needed presence. These days I move more slowly. I make tea. I sit by the window in the late afternoon. I think about the life I had and the parts of it I never fully entered. I do not know how much time I have left. At 76, that is no longer an abstract thought. It is simply the truth. And this is mine. I was not ruined by failure. I was diminished by hesitation, by all the words I saved, by all the affection I measured out too carefully, by all the moments I assumed would come again. Now the house is quiet, and some evenings, when the light begins to fade, I sit very still and think about how much of a life can be lost, not through catastrophe, but through fear so quiet it sounds, for many years, like wisdom.